All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. As I mentioned in the chat, my name is Kelsey. I work for Jamboree as our communications and policy manager, and I'm going to serve as the moderator for today's community meeting for North Harbor Village. Without further ado, I just want to go over some of our ground rules. T and Danielle, who are on the call and both have their cameras on, are our presenters for today. We ask that while they are presenting that you keep your microphones muted, though please feel free to use the chat to ask questions. At the end of their formal presentation, which should take no more than 15 to 20 minutes, we will give all of you an opportunity to ask direct questions. We'll unmute you. So please know you'll have a chance to have your voice heard today. So I just also want to note, just for the record, the meeting today is being recorded, and by staying on the call today, you consent to us recording this for our internal purposes. And now I will go ahead and turn it over to Danielle and T from the Jamboree team.
Thanks, Kelsey. Good evening, everyone. As Kelsey said, I'm Danielle Letary. I'm our Director of Supportive Services. I will be one of the presenters this evening. And T Tran, our Senior Director of Development, will also be presenting. We're here to talk about North Harbor Village. It's our veteran housing located in Santa Ana. First, I want to give you an introduction to Jamboree. We are an affordable nonprofit housing developer. We've been in the business for about 30 years. We're located here in Orange County. Our corporate office is in Irvine. We just opened a corporate office in Sacramento a few years ago, so we are expanding across the state, but our main home base is definitely here with our corporate staff in Irvine. Our mission is to deliver high quality, affordable housing and services that transform lives and strengthen communities. Every person will live in a strong, healthy, sustainable community is a vision that we are committed to. These are more than just words to us at Jamboree. It really goes into every single aspect and every department located within Jamboree. We're committed for this in our construction team and the interior and exterior design of our buildings. We're committed to it in our local partnerships with our community and our community providers. We're committed to it in our services delivery and our meeting our resident needs. And we're committed to it in our asset management and long-term ownership. So Jamboree, we are a long-term owner of our properties. We are owner for 55 years. So we really are coming into a community and becoming a partner in that community. So we really want to make sure that we're living out this vision. We are statewide, as I said, we're up in Sacramento. We have 93 properties across the state. We have 9,000 units with 18,800 Californians calling Jamboree home. We're really proud of that number, and we're excited to be expanding that number. Population served. So we serve a lot of different folks. We have family sites, seniors, special need populations, homeless, and veterans. We do have experience in different supportive housing models with different populations across the state, and we believe we can be successful here in Santa Ana with our new project. We have a similar project a couple miles away, actually, in Santa Ana called Heroes Landing with a very similar population. At this point, you all might be asking, what is supportive housing? Now that I've said it a few times. So supportive housing, we really find, is the solution to the housing crisis, which is there's a lack of affordable housing out there. I think every person on this call can identify that homelessness is an issue here in the state of California and across the country. And supportive housing is the answer, but it's not just providing this affordable housing. It's really combining that affordable housing with supportive services. You can't have just housing. That's definitely not the answer. Just services aren't the answer. It's the combination of the two that really leads to success. So we take our high quality affordable housing with population specific services to really help individuals become stably housed. And you might be asking, what are supportive services? I'll get into that later in the presentation, but a basic overview, it really is wraparound services to help our residents meet their goals. So this looks like case management, health and wellness services, clinical services, skill building, or social or recreational activities. And this is a nationally recognized best practice. So there's a myriad of research articles out there that I'm not going to bore everyone with that point that this is the answer for serving chronically homeless individuals and families or individuals experiencing some sort of disability or mental health issue. So there's a lot of research pointing to that this is the answer. Next, I'm going to pass it over to T so he can get a little bit more into the details of North Harbor Village.
Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate that. You can see here, North Harbor Village is an adaptive reuse existing motel. We've been working with on this project for last couple of years, and before I go on further, I want to recognize that Ali Pescapor with the city of Santa Ana is the planner that's on this project and had helped us get this far. So I want to acknowledge that. But this type of project is, as you can see here, is transforming the part of the neighborhood that, those that live around there, it's a really rundown hotel that we're looking to rehab here and particularly cater to the veteran of areas. The project is in a specific plan area, which we are working on to revitalize. And being an owner of 55 years, that, as Daniel mentioned, we put a lot of effort into the quality of these projects. You can see here, trying to really put a lot of investment in the buildings, because this is really a gateway according to the specific plan that the city has. So we want to make sure that we do this project in a way that really, help revitalize the neighborhood. And as part of being a long-term owner, we want to make sure this project is sustainable. And so whatever we do here, we look at the system, looking at solar, energy efficient feature of the building. So that way, we operate and make sure that we can keep this building looking good for a long time. Next slide. So this is a site plan that we've been working on. The existing building itself as you can see in the yellow here, we are converting this 91 unit studio into, 91 hotel units into an 89 studio apartment, roughly about 330 square feet of space. And also that includes a kitchenette and a bathroom. We are reconfiguring the parking lot to create 72 parking space. And you can see the amount of open space that we're creating for this community. So in terms of amenities, we have a lot of different spaces, barbecue area. We have a vegetable garden on the left-hand corner. We have a dog run. And a lot of spaces that, because the studio are so confined here, these are really important to provide for our tenants. As I mentioned, this is a project for our veterans, and they are coming from a homeless veteran population. We need to provide housing, community center that we are creating. So there's about 4,300 square feet new space in the middle that we are creating to provide services, lounging area. We have a demonstration kitchen, and then on the second floor we have counseling center to help folks that needs it. Next slide. So these are before and after pictures. So you can see on the top here is an image of an existing building looking east, and we're remodeling it so that you can see the new feature on the bottom. So really looking at the facade and trying to recreate and make it look more residential than in a hotel. Next slide. So this is the south elevation. You can see it gives you a nice perspective of how it looks right now. And the transformation, once we're done here, it's going to be very attractive. That's going to add a lot of value for the community here, and as well as our tenant. Next. So in terms of timeline here, as I mentioned, we started this project about 2 years ago, and a lot of that involved in putting together, all the design and then all the financing together. So we're happy to say that we can start work on this project in terms of closing it and starting construction around March and April of next year. Our goal is to complete this project by May and June of 2022, and hopefully by the end of 2022, we'll have 100% occupancy. So I think next slide is I'm gonna turn back to Danielle.
Thanks, T. All right, so now I'm going to get a little bit more into the operations of the site and really get into more detail of what the supportive services are and who our residents will be. All right, so why Jamboree and what do we bring to the table in a development like this? So as we've talked about, we are an active long-term owner and we have had 30 years of experience. And so we have found an effective solution of how to manage these sites. And what we've really found is the secret ingredient in our recipe is really the Jamboree oversight and coordination. So this is really taking our asset management team who is managing the physical assets. So that's the maintenance of the building, the physical being, and the finances, taking our asset management team with our on-site supportive services team and really having coordination between those two teams with our on-site property management. So it's really effectively monitoring and communicating and managing this community with these three teams is what makes the population work and the site work. And so it's really looking at consistent monitoring of our outcome measures. Every site we have specific outcomes that we expect that site to hit, which is all based off of research and similar sites in the surrounding community and across the country. We do on-site inspections. Our corporate staff goes out multiple times a year to actually inspect the site and property to make sure it's living up to our Jamboree standard. And then we have a million of meetings that I'm not going to get into, but between the services staff, the county, the city, the community, making sure that everything is running smoothly, because as a long-term owner, we want to know everything that is happening in the day-to-day, so we can make sure that it's running effectively and running according to plan. And then on top of that oversight and monitoring, we have a very specific resident services plan designed for the residents living at North Harbor Village. We don't have a cookie cutter plan of, all right, this is what we do and slap it on like a lot of other developers can do. We really look at a specific plan geared at this population. And this is based off of a myriad of different things. So we really look at the resident needs as they're coming in. So we make sure we're doing assessments with our residents when they come in to identify their needs. We do resident questionnaires to ask the residents what they want. I don't want to be presumptuous and think we know. We want to hear from the residents and get their input in this as well. We look at the design and location. As T spoke a little bit about the design of this building, we do have this large community space. We have training rooms, we have computer labs. So we look at that design, what we can bring on site and offer on site. And then we look at the surrounding community to see, okay, who can we partner with in the community? What resources are around us? So it's really all encompassing, making sure we have a good plan to meet the needs of the site to make it run smoothly. And then who will be providing the resident services here at this site? It's going to be the Orange County Healthcare Agency, the VA, and Jamboree. So the VA is going to be overseeing 75 of these studio units. These units are all going to have a VASH voucher on them. So residents living here will be a veteran who is VA healthcare eligible, who's been honorably discharged, and who's currently experiencing homelessness. And then there's going to be 14 units that the healthcare agency is going to be overseeing, and the residents living in these 14 units are going to be experiencing homelessness with a disability. So the VA and the healthcare agency is going to be providing the clinical and intensive case management services. And Jamboree's team, we're going to have 3 full-time staff members on site who are going to be doing the community building resident services on site. And really what these services look like, it's making referrals to our residents to available resources and programs to help them meet their needs. It's coordinating social and community building activities. We find it really important, especially at a new site, to make sure we have plenty of community building opportunities. We want to create a home here, have our residents take pride where they live, take pride in the building and the neighborhood. So we really focus on that, especially in the beginning. We deliver health and wellness classes, and then we partner with outside agencies for educational classes. And these types of classes can look like cooking classes, coding classes, GED classes. Again, it's really based on what our residents' needs are. And then something just to note is we have our Heroes Landing site, as I talked about, which is right down the way. I think it's about 2 miles from the site. And we have a veteran service collaborative there. And really how we came about this veteran services collaborative is Jamboree was building a 75-unit apartment building for veterans. We've served veterans at other sites, but we have never had a full veteran property. So we wanted to reach out to veteran providers in Orange County to hear from them. Okay, what do our veterans need? What should we offer on site to make this successful? And we found some great partners in the area who identified these are the main areas you need to work with the veterans on, and actually volunteered to come on site. So we built them space at the Heroes Landing site. So they have offices there to help provide services to our folks. And so we're going to partner with them and leverage those relationships for this site, and we can offer transportation back and forth as needed. So our partners are Veterans Legal Institute, who's offering legal services to our veterans, Strength and Support, which is offering free counseling services, the Goodwill Tyranny Center, who offers education and employment services. So we're going to partner with those agencies to make sure that our residents' needs are getting met. And really the overall goal of our supportive services are to make sure that residents stay housed and they have an affordable place to live that's safe, where they can work on their goals and have the support to get there. And overall, with all of these service providers, we're going to have about 5 to 8 full-time service providers on site, and that's in addition to our full-time property management team. Next is security. Security is a big question. It comes up a lot, and security is really important to us as a community member and for our residents. So all of our sites are access controlled with gates, and we do have security cameras inside and outside of our buildings. So we do know who's coming and going from our sites. It's really important to have eyes on and being able to control that access. We do have visitation protocols for non-residents. So we know who's coming to visit our residents. We know who's going. I know a lot of times with communities like this, people are concerned if it's going to attract everyone on the site and they're just going to move in. We have a lease that they're signing with occupancy standards and rules for how many guests and how long their guests can stay. And with this access controlled entry, we know who's coming on and who's staying. And then there is a very distinct process of how to become a resident at one of our sites. So it's a long process with a lot of screening and a lot of different coordination between different partner agencies to make it happen. We're not having people just walk up off the street asking to live here, saying, hey, I'm homeless, can I move in? It's a long process to making sure this person in our site, their needs are going to work for us and we're going to work for them. So there really is a long process, and we don't have drop-in services at the site. So we're not similar to a shelter. I think a lot of people get an idea of the long lines in the morning, people waiting to come in and take a shower or get their meal, and then they hang out and congregate in the front. We're not a drop-in center. It's affordable permanent housing, just like any other apartment building. So people have a lease and they're living on site. This is their home. It's not just a place for drop-in services. We offer services for our residents living there, but it's not a drop-in service location. And then, as I said, we do have professional property management team, and they do have full coverage on site for 24/7. So they do live on site. So we constantly have staff members on site. Next is our good neighbor policies. So as I talked about, we are that long-term neighbor. We're going to be in the community, and in our mission statement, it really is part of Jamboree's mission to strengthen community. So we want to be a good neighbor. So how we do get our residents is we work with the coordinated entry system. This is a county-wide intake process. So anyone that's experiencing homelessness in Orange County can get on this list and get assessed for it. So it's really this county-wide intake system and process that matches an individual to housing that best meets their needs. So it's really a pretty elaborate process that I'm not going to get into, but it really is taking individual, looking at what their needs and seeing if this housing matches them. And then we will have preferencing at this site. So at this site, we are going to have a Santa Ana preference. So we're going to look at that list, look at the VA qualifications, the healthcare agency qualifications, and then see who on the list is located in Santa Ana. And we want anyone located in Santa Ana to have a preference for living here in this building. As I talked about, everyone does sign a lease. It's not a shelter. So everyone comes in, signs a lease, just like you or I would sign a lease for an apartment complex. There's a list of house rules that everyone must follow. So if someone does happen to break a house rule, this is when that supportive housing comes in. We work with property management and our services team to help mitigate that behavior. So an example would be, say someone's listening to music late at night one night, their neighbor calls property management and makes a complaint. because it was after the hours that they were allowed to be listening to that music. Services and property management would meet with that resident to help them understand that they broke their lease. They would get a warning. Services would work with that individual to mitigate that behavior, whether that be, let's get you headphones, let's not listen to music after these times, and just work on strategies to get there. And we use that same process for whatever the lease violation might be. I think people hear this type of housing, hear homeless, and automatically it goes to mental illness, drugs, alcohol. How are you going to put them here and this is happening? Again, everyone's following a lease. Everyone has to abide by these leases. And the on-site services team is working with our individuals to mitigate any behavior that is breaking this lease. And we do follow an evictions best practice. So if someone continues to break a lease, we offer all the support there. Someone will get evicted if they continue to break it. So it's not a come one, come all, you're staying forever. It's really, we work with individuals and we want to mitigate the behavior, but we also do want to protect our community and protect our residents. And then we do have staff on site for anyone in the community to come talk to. So we want to be a good neighbor. We want to hear from you. We have the Jamboree Supportive Services team on site. We have our property management team on site that are always there for communication to hear what's going on in the neighborhood. If there is an issue or a concern or a question, we're always there for that. And then we also are there, we've had a lot of neighbors in other areas that come back and volunteer at our site going, hey, my kid needs a volunteer opportunity, or I would like to volunteer for Christmas, or I have clothes I need to get rid of. And we've created that type of relationship. So we're really there, we're open to communication for the good and the bad. Last, parking is always a big issue, especially I know in Santa Ana, in this area, it can be a big issue. We do have a parking mitigation plan. So at this site, we did hire a third-party consultant to come review our plans, review the area, and give us a recommendation for the best type of parking plan. And then we did work with the city on this. So we do have 72 parking spots for our site. At our Heroes Landing site, which is a similar population down the road, about 43% of our residents have a car. So our 72 spots, we think, fully covers us for our expectations of resident to car ratio. However, if the parking was to get filled up, we do have a mitigation plan and some next steps of what we would do to address that. With that, that's everything that we've prepared. So I'm going to pass it back over to Kelsey to address any questions.
Thank you, Danielle and T. So we've had a couple questions come in via our website. So I'm going to go and via the chat. So I'm going to go to those first. So the first question, Danielle, I think that this will probably go to you. But the question is about how Jamboree maintains the exterior of the buildings that we own and operate. There's kind of this fear that after the North Harbor Village operates for 1 or 2 years, we kind of just forget about it and move on. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you want to go back to that picture of Diamond that we took at our 10-year anniversary last year, but I'll go ahead and kick that question over to you.
Definitely. I think that's a great question. And I think historically, a lot of us hear supportive housing or affordable housing, and our mind goes directly to, like, I grew up outside of LA. My mind goes to the projects of row after row of cookie cutter homes and trash everywhere and barbed wire fence and broken down cars. That's, I think, most people's opinion of it. But that's definitely not what we're building now, and that's definitely not what's seen as a best practice today. So as you see, this picture here is of in Anaheim at a property called Diamond Apartment Homes. We celebrated it's 11 years now, but it's 11 years old, but this photo was taken out at the 10-year anniversary. And as you can see, it's upkept and still beautiful. We do this with Jamboree through our asset management team and our on-site supportive services, and we are the active long-term owner. So we own our properties for 55 years. So we want to make sure that we're upkeeping them appropriately. Every single site does have maintenance plans, deferred maintenance plans. We definitely have them long list of what we need to do and continuing to do to upkeep our sites. And this is all built into our operations budget. So that's what T's team does to make sure that this site can operate long-term and have enough funds in it to make sure we're managing our upkeep. And so this is all coming to us through resident rent. So there is it's not a one-time grant that we're putting towards this funding. It's guaranteed money that's coming in that we're going to use to upkeep our property. And really this is done with our property management team, our asset management team, and our services team working together and making sure that's happening. And I do encourage anyone, if you have questions or want to see more pictures of our properties, to check out our website. Caitlin or someone could put it in the chat. It's jamboreehousing.com, and you can go through and see the photos of our different properties.
If I may add to that, Danielle, Kelsey, when we work on these projects, we have investors that invest in these projects. So they have very strong interest to make sure these assets are upkeep. So in addition to what Danielle was talking about in the operating budget, we have replacement reserve set aside. So just in case, there's things that need to be repaired, improved, that we can work with our investor to get that funding to fix the building. So and in the long run, these property, what we go through is a 15-year period where we can look at the project and look at possibly resyndicating, meaning get the project more fun to do upgrades. So that's something we can always look at down the road.
Thank you so much, T. And Danielle, so T, I'm actually going to come right back to you. So there is a question that I think you'll be best suited, Danielle. It might be helpful to pull up the slide that has the site plan, just so T can reference that. But the question is, what is happening to the fencing separating North Harbor Village and the homes adjacent to the site, where there'll be a new wall constructed, or will the same wall remain standing? So T, can you go ahead and maybe reference that?
Yeah, so I'm not sure which wall you're talking about, but definitely if we start from the front, from North Harbor, that whole area going back to where I think those are part of commercial. So it's pretty in a bad shape right now. So as part of our project and the way the project is redesigned, we're going to put a new fence. Well, it has a little bit of grade drop, so we're going to retain that area and put a new fence on top. So it's a metal fence that is going to go that far back. As far as going back to the other side, because we assess the condition of those are what we call CMU wall, concrete masonry unit wall. Our thought is not to change those, but as we go through it, as with any project, when we start doing work, if it's required to look at the condition, because we're, again, being a long-time owner, we have a chance here to improve the property. And if things are not working, we like to replace it so that, down the road, Danielle's group doesn't have to, an asset management group doesn't have to deal with these issues. So Jamboree, as we talked about in terms of quality, we want to make sure these things last, being a long-time owner. So if you are, I don't know who would generate those comments, but we'd be happy to look at specific condition. But I know we have we put together a pretty good consultant team, from architect, engineer that looks at everything in really detail and working with the city to get plans together to improve this property.
Thank you, T. And I'm going to come right back to you because I think that this is a relatively easy question for you to answer. So we've talked a lot about how Jamboree makes sure that we, keep these homes affordable for at least 55 years, which then naturally begs the question of what happens after 55 years. Do we sell them? Do they become market rate? Can you talk a little bit about what our internal process is for kind of evaluating those things?
Well, that's a great question because it is looking really further out there. So typically affordable housing, the way we've been doing this in the last, I guess, since '86 when the tax credit program came out, which allowed these type of projects to be built and put these regulatory agreement that has basically the 55 years essentially came out of the state tax credit program. So by regulation, because we're using tax credit for these deals, that's what they provided. But as Jamboree being, our mission is to provide affordable housing, to the extent that we can always look at keep these assets because, the need for affordable housing is so great here. So I mentioned every 15 years, you can basically look at resyndication so that you can improve the property. So we can't foresee we can't predict what's happening, you know, in the future, but in the many years I've been, you know, 15 years I've been working in the industry here, that it's a, and I get this question a lot too, and you can get into philosophical discussion, but being Jamboree, with our mission here, I think our goal is to work and try to get this project set up so that, you know, long term we'll keep it affordable. I don't know if that helps answer.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer, T. And what I would just maybe add is, as a nonprofit affordable housing developer, we are under certain regulations that, you know, oversees how we receive funding, how funding goes out. So rest assured, for the person who asked this question, it's not just our word about, you know, we're committed to being affordable housing developers. It also has to do with how we file. And then the last thing that I would add is, oftentimes, you know, our projects are just the advertisement for the next project. So we have a really vested interest in making sure that they remain affordable, quality apartment homes in the communities that we build in. So T and Danielle, that looks like it wraps up our questions that came directly into the chat. So what I am going to do is see if anybody wants to raise their hand and ask a live question, and then I can have the opportunity to unmute you and we can get your question answered. So you can raise your hand by selecting the reaction in the middle of your Zoom screen. Gonna give a couple seconds. I can also come through and unmute folks very quickly just to see if they have any questions, because I know sometimes the Zoom can be a little bit challenging with all the different buttons. Okay, so Rebecca, I'm gonna come to you really quickly. Don't feel pressure to ask a question. I'm just gonna unmute you in case you're having any technical issues.
Hi.
Did you have a question, Rebecca?
No, I don't. Thank you for the presentation. I'm really excited for this project. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming to the meeting tonight. We really appreciate it. Okay, so the next person I'm going to come to is Ali.
Hey, thanks for putting on this meeting. I think it was really informative for the community and all that. I was hoping if you guys might be able to spend a little bit of time kind of describing the process that you went through for getting funding from the city, as well as the other sources of funding, and then how that kind of led to submitting the development project and kind of to where we are today, so that it's like a kind of like an easy to follow full timeline from kind of inception to where we are tonight.
Absolutely. T, do you want to go ahead and take that one?
Yeah, I'll take that one. Ollie, thanks for that question. So I mentioned this project is basically a 2-year in the making, and we went through an RFP process with the city. So the city has available fund they usually issue for affordable housing. So we apply and we secure a project-based voucher, which is a housing choice voucher from HUD, and as well as some funding for CBG. And from there, we looked at other sources. So John Witkowski, who's my colleague on this call as well. So throughout the last couple of years, we've been basically applying for funding sources. So as I don't know, just in terms of affordable housing, these projects, you cannot just go out like a typical market rate project where you get, you know, some equity and some debt and you can build. So there's tons and tons of capital stack that you have to get and try to make this deal work. So a typical project, you know, is about, you know, smaller size. So this is a rather large project for affordable housing, because once you have a larger size, obviously it costs more to build. So we went through about eight plus application from various sources from the state, from banks. Usually they have grants. So all in all, we end up securing a couple of sources from the state. So one is called the Veteran Housing, Homeless Housing Program Fund. The other is, I mentioned tax credit. There's this project is unique. The tax program, I don't want to get into too much, but there's a type where you layer tax exempt bond on it. So we have that funding as well. And then the other source we receive is a local housing trust fund. And then the last one here is a bank, which is part of the Federal Home Loan Bank. It's AHP program. So it does takes a lot of time to put these things together for a big project. So, and again, it's just, persistent. Jamboree's been in the business 30 years, and these projects just takes time to put together, but it's complex. And it takes a village to put these deals together, not just on the financing, but the design I didn't mention earlier. It just takes, partnership with the city, partnership with the communities, the lending communities, and all around within Jamboree. So I don't know, Ali, I think I cover everything you asked about.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Yes. Thank you. That was really helpful. And just for those who are listening and just kind of wanted to describe also the process from the city's end, this type of project is a project that's allowed in the harbor plan area without any special approvals from the Planning Commission or City Council. It's what's called a by right or a ministerial project. But because it's by right or ministerial, it sometimes doesn't allow for a lot of kind of one-on-one conversation with the community like we're having tonight. So we encouraged Jamboree Housing, and they were very receptive to the idea of basically holding this community discussion tonight so that there's no surprises, and if and when they start construction and breaking ground, that you actually have people's names and faces, not just here at the city, but also with the developer, so that if there's any questions or issues that kind of arise over the course of the future of the project, that we all know each other and we can reach out to each other and help each other answer questions. So, so Jamboree folks, I just want to thank you again for putting on the meeting tonight, and I wanted to thank everyone from the community for staying late through dinner time and actually having an open ear and listening to their presentation.
Thanks, Ollie. And I'll jump in on that too, onto T's and what Ollie said about the process. It's not only that hard for the funding, we also have to submit our services plan through each one of those funding applications that get reviewed by the state, who identify, is this appropriate for a level of services for those that are going to be living here? So they understand our resident profile. We worked really closely with CalVet, the state agency for veterans here, of them really tearing apart this plan and making sure we have the appropriate services. So not only is the funding looked at with a fine tooth comb, so is the services. So it's on both sides.
Thank you so much, Danielle, T, Molly. That seems to be all of our questions except for this last one, Danielle, that I'm going to need your help with. Can you go ahead and put up the contact information slide for me?
Yes.
Thank you so much. So as Jamboree mentioned, as we mentioned many times tonight, Jamboree prides itself on being a real member of the community, which means that we want to hear from you, whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's just general questions. So the website information that you see on the screen in front of you is specific to this future supportive housing community. So you type that in, that is going to be the place where we do all of the updates about this community, starting construction, move-in, leasing. So if you know veterans in the community that are in need of housing, make sure that you give them this information too, because that's where we're going to put additional information about leasing processes. And then finally, there was a couple questions that came directly to me in the chat about if there are future questions that come to mind. How can you reach us? You'll see an email on here, outreach@jamboreehousing.com. that looks like it's just a group email, but it's actually